presidential campaign in Chile will extend a few more weeks. There was no outright winner on Sunday. Candidate for the new majority coalition, Michelle Bachelet, took a little more than 46% of the vote. That was more than 20 points ahead of her nearest rival, Evelyn Matei, who got 25%. CCTV's Joel Richards joins us live from Santiago with reaction to the election results. Joel.
Evening, Mike. Well, as you said, really, there's been no real surprise here. There's no mystery, really, to these elections. Michelle Bachelet was always the firm favourite for what would be for her to return to La Moneda, the presidential palace, which you can see just behind us. For Bachelet, though, although she was 20 points ahead of her closest rival, Evelyn Matei, nonetheless, it was slightly disappointing not to win in the first round. They had hoped to wrap things up yesterday. As it is, they'll have to wait till the 15th of December. But also, in yesterday's elections, they were voting for Congress, for the members, for the senators and deputies. And certainly the way that those results have gone mean that for the future president of Chile, it may not be such an easy ride.
Michelle
Bachelet won Sunday's elections, but now she needs to win again on December the 15th. The former president fell short of the 50% mark to avoid a runoff. Celebrations at her headquarters were more subdued than had been hoped for.
We made a great effort considering the number of candidates and the challenge of the huge voluntary vote, and we were very close to success. We won tonight, and we will work to win an ample margin in December.
With less than 25% of the vote, the government's candidate, Evelyn Matei, performed poorly, though she maintained her pledge to continue Sebastián Piñera's policies from the last 4 years.
We believe we've been able to construct a solid country that needs to be improved, that needs to be widened, to be made more just, but we're proud of what Chile has achieved.
Going head-to-head, there seems very little doubt that Michelle Bachelet will win next month's elections, but her new majority party needs to convince voters both to turn out, but also that they will come good on their campaign promises. There was a sign of what may be to come on Sunday. Students protested at Michelle Bachelet's election headquarters. 4 student leaders from the 2011 demonstrations, including Camila Vallejo, all won seats in Congress. Educational reform is a key demand from the population, but it could in turn create problems for the next government.
If you say, well, we are going to address the problem with the educational system, that means you are going to face huge resistance from very organized trade unions, that happened in Chile in the last 5 years.
There's just one more hurdle preventing Michelle Bachelet from reaching the presidential palace as expected, and that's when the real challenge begins. So coming up, Mike, we have a month of electioneering then ahead of this runoff between Michelle Bachelet and Evelyn Matei. As we said, though, clearly Michelle Bachelet, the clear favourite, will expect to see many of the votes that were spread out in yesterday's elections. And there was a total of 9 candidates in total, so we'd expect a number of those votes to go to Michelle Bachelet. And she's been campaigning on really a wide and sweeping reforms. She said there'll be 50 reforms and measures in the first 100 days. Perhaps most importantly is whether or not she can achieve what would be a reform of the constitution, really looking to bring Chile into a constitution that represents the changes that have happened in Chile in the last 20 years or so. On Sunday, we spoke to a woman in her late 50s who recently returned to Chile. She's lived abroad all her life, and she only voted for the very first time. So for a vote for Chileans living abroad, for example, is one of those reforms that Michelle Bachelet will look to introduce.
Joel, it sounds like very ambitious plans, though. 50 reforms in 100 days. How lucky is she going to be in getting those reforms through Congress?
Well, it's going to be very interesting, Mike, because the way that Congress is structured requires different levels of voting for certain reforms. So Michelle Bachelet, for example, is looking to reform tax, increasing that corporate tax to give the finance for public spending. She's won enough votes and deputies in Congress to advance that particular reform. But then, for example, for education, one which is a strong social demand in Chile, she doesn't have enough. So she'll have to juggle some of those relationships with some of the other parties if she is to bring in all of these reforms.
Joel Richards live for us in Santiago. Thanks so much.